These are the last days of MaNer Plaw, the military headquarters of the Karen. For 48 years, the Karen people have been fighting successive military regimes in Burma for control over their traditional lands. Only a few weeks ago, this river which separates Burma and Thailand was still controlled by them. So was a large stretch of territory along the border of eastern Burma. It was part of the so-called liberated zone. And it was to MaNer Plaw that thousands of students and pro-democracy politicians from the cities fled at the beginning of this decade. Here was its last stand against the military dictatorship. Every Karen child knows this song. It's their national anthem, and they sing it in their own language. All of these children are orphans, and each of them has an intimate relationship with Burma's regime. Their parents were killed or tortured by soldiers. This is the veteran guerrilla fighter who gives the orders and has done for more than 25 years. General Burmese, Supreme Military Commander of the Karen Rebel Army, President of the Karen National Union. He's both hero and ageing warlord. He has some 5,000 soldiers left, but the news hasn't been good for years. General La too has been fighting alongside Burmese for most of his life.
What situation you would like to know?
Well, the situation at the front lines.
Oh, at the front line. Our soldiers stay as before.
But things are not the same as before. For decades, the KNU's territory has been shrinking, and the estimated 200,000 Karen still living in so-called liberated areas are exhausted by the years of resistance. The military rulers in Burma, those who run the SLORD, the State Law and Order Restoration Council, have persuaded a number of other ethnic minorities to sign ceasefire agreements. These agreements are regarded as sham because they have not addressed the fundamental political issues of autonomy and human rights. But the SLORD, with its army of 350,000, has stopped even talking about a formal ceasefire with the Karen.
Surrender is out of question.
They're old men now, but 40 years ago they were young guerrillas fighting for Karen independence. They're deeply suspicious of the Burmese because previous ceasefire talks held in Rangoon turned out to be traps for Karen delegates.
Do you believe that Rangoon is sincere about wanting to make peace?
No, not at all. They are not sincere.
The Karen, united under Burmese, have been able to resist decades of Burmese army attack. The guns are second-hand and cheap, bought from Cambodia. Here are some of the same weapons used in the Vietnam War. And this is the KNU's mountainous front line. Burma's big guns are only a few hundred kilometres away on the other side of the valley. And where did the shells land? So they nearly got you? The soldiers here say they've been getting messages from Karen villages further inside Burma. The villagers have told them that the Burmese army has sent more battalions with heavy guns to reinforce its front line just over there. At this stage in their long war against Rangoon, the Karen are virtually isolated and extremely vulnerable, and there's a real expectation that Rangoon is preparing for a final assault. The Karen are now hopelessly outnumbered. For every one of them, there are at least 10 Burmese.
The big guns dropped in the river. So he said, so we can't go to the temple, to the Karen side.
Today, the shelling is sporadic, but only a few weeks ago there was some very heavy fighting at the temple. It sits only a few kilometres downstream from the Karen headquarters, at the junction of two rivers. The position is highly strategic. Whoever controls the rivers controls the Karen. But the Karen are not proud of the battle which took place back there, for it was not their soldiers pitted against enemy Burmese, but Christian Karen fighting Buddhist Karen.
Oh, I have good news for you today. You have all been adopted as the children of God. All are one in Christ Jesus.
American missionaries first brought the Bible to this part of the world in the early 1900s.
Not one Karen baby, not one Karen boy, not one Karen girl is born without a father.
The good news spread.
We give thanks to God and our Father.
Today, virtually the entire leadership of the rebel Karen National Union is Christian, either Baptist or Seventh-day Adventist. General Burmese was once an animist. He converted to Seventh-day Adventism after his marriage. His son Rocky, the man interpreting the sermon, was born into it.
And I was saying, oh, you looking at me? Oh, hey, you guys, hey, look!
Every weekend, this church on Burma's border is filled with the spirit of the Old Testament. But the majority of Karen are still Buddhist or animist. More than 2/3 of Burmese soldiers and their families are not Christian. Still, he imposes a strict Christian code of conduct on them. Christian and Buddhist Karen have been fighting on the same side for nearly 50 years. But the recent losses have been high. Hundreds of mainly Buddhist soldiers were killed or wounded in Rangoon's huge 1992 offensive. Afterwards, families began sending their sons to temples to become monks rather than fighters. Religion has become the key to MaNer Plaw's fall, and already the tensions are beyond repair. These Buddhist monks remain loyal to the Karen National Union. But a group belonging to a vegetarian order, along with hundreds of Buddhist soldiers, have deserted the ranks to join the enemy's side. The Karen leadership, which includes this senior monk, blames the SLORD for instigating the split. There seems little doubt the regime in Rangoon played a role in fomenting the division. A senior monk, supported by the SLORD, arrived at the Junction Temple some months ago and began preaching an anti-KNU line. How will you mend this split? But Burmese and his Christian leaders underestimated the level of disaffection within their own ranks, among the majority Buddhist soldiers, exhausted by the war and so much human sacrifice. At the high school, there's only one class still going, and it's modern history. Most of the students who'd been studying for their final exams are gone.
Do
you worry about them?
MaNer Plaw is protected by a long, high ridge which runs behind it. We're hitching a ride up to see the SLORD's position on the other side. The logs are to build more bunkers. From here, you can look straight at the enemy on Sleeping Dog Mountain. The strategic position was taken by the Burmese army in 1992. This was where hundreds of Karen soldiers and civilians were killed. In one of the KNU's military hospitals, a 14-year-old goes through a daily agony. His bullet wounds have to be dressed.
How can you bear watching all the young Karen men go off to either get killed or come back wounded?
The Karen have been fighting successive regimes in Rangoon for nearly 50 years. Fathers and sons have fought and died, and generations of daughters have grown up to be nurses. Trouble within the KNU has proved disastrous for the Burmese students, who still dream of a democratic Burma with the detained Aung San Suu Kyi as head of state. They're adults now, but most were teenagers when they arrived at the border. School kids who fled the 1988 massacres, in which thousands of students and pro-democracy demonstrators were killed by the military. Another wave of youthful idealism arrived after the political crackdown of 1990. This is no casual boat trip. There are SLORD troops in the hills, and the students and their leader are at risk. Dr. Nyong agreed to show us the Student Army's headquarters, which was recently overrun by Burmese troops. It's about an hour by boat from MaNer Plaw. The area is still full of the landmines the students planted before their emergency evacuation across the river to Thailand.
They came down from this hill through the slopes and along with the streams. It can reach to the northern part of the camps.
That's the easiest way in, is it?
Yeah. And I think they're trying to approach to the headquarter area. They crashed with the landmine, so they have some injury, and so they retreat back.
Up to 1,000 students have been pushed off their own soil. There's no security in Burma anymore. Their new temporary base is this village, only a kilometre inside Thailand and within easy range of the Burmese army if it wished to strike.
Militarily, it's very difficult to move and defend and resist against them because they can deploy more forces, and we cannot have military help from the KNU because KNU have their own internal problem and they have some limited resources.
So you must be very distressed that this KNU rebellion is taking place.
Yeah.
As allies in arms, the KNU provided the students with most of their weapons and virtually all their ammunition. That support has now gone. The KNU needs everything it has to defend itself. And anyway, Bangkok would never tolerate an armed student resistance operating from its territory. As a soldier in the trenches, Charlie Chaplin dreamed of winning the war single-handedly. This is the image Dr. Nyong chose to adorn his now deserted war office.
So, are you pessimistic?
And I think there's our aims and there's our destination, but we think that one day it will be achieved, whether it is far or it is close or it's not important. And one day if we can achieve those things, it's important.
This is how the KNU has been funding its war against Burma's regime. Teak. Thailand pays 2 concession fees for the right to take these rare and valuable logs out of Burmese forests. For every tree, the Thais pay an amount to the junta in Rangoon and a smaller amount to the KNU, which controls this border territory. A lot of this tropical hardwood will end up in Western countries like Australia. And for Thailand, even though it's paying twice, it's still a great deal. The commerce continues between the shelling. Thai boats carrying logs ply the river past the KNU's front line. The SLORD wants control of this trade, and when it's got it, the Karen will lose their main source of revenue. Most of MaNer Plaw's residents, military and civilian, are evacuating the headquarters, pulling back to established villages just inside Thailand. But some are staying. Burma's most popular political party, the National League for Democracy, has a base at the border. It won most of the country's votes at the 1990 elections. Most people know of it because it's the party of Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. Senior party officials like U Tin Ong fled here in 1990 as hundreds of other party members and politicians in Rangoon and Mandalay were jailed by the SLORD. But now he and a large NLD contingent are trapped. They can't go back to Rangoon, and if the Burmese army reaches them, they'll almost certainly be killed.
Happy birthday to you.
But this isn't a happy birthday. The general is 68 and about to lose everything he's fought for. He makes one last plea for Karen unity. Up to 500 Buddhists have now defected to the SLORD, and they don't hear his birthday speech.
Bali.
What happened just then when we arrived? What was that shooting all about? And so how close were the soldiers? How close were the Burmese?
They were bored of one,
Burmese troops led by the Buddhist Karen defectors are behind one of the KNU's front lines for the first time.
Have they hit any positions today?
The shelling is constant now. MaNer Plaw is no longer safe. These Christian Karen casualties are about to be evacuated from the military hospital. Will SLORD win? More and more Karen villages are fleeing. Hundreds arrive on the Thai side with enough food to last them only a few days. Many of these people are Buddhist, still loyal to the KNU and terrified of the Buddhists who've defected to the SLORD. So do you know of people who have been killed?
Yes, she heard.
And who is killing these people?
Security-wise, I think it is in a bad situation because last night 60 troops of the turncoats crossed the Selwyn and occupy one high point not very far from MaNer Plaw.
For the first time, Karen leaders concede the possibility of defeat.
What will happen if MaNer Plaw falls?
If MaNer Plaw falls, well, we have to move to another place. That is politically, yes, it's a setback for us. But we can still carry on our struggle for freedom, our struggle for democracy.
Why should the world care?
We leave as the fighting gets worse and the Burmese troops move closer. For the Karen, things look very bad. And the question now appears to be not if MaNer Plaw will fall, but when. The end came quickly. 2 days later, the last of the KNU soldiers and their allies torched their headquarters of 21 years and fled.
ကျွန်တော် RPG ကြီးတွေနဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဟိုကDSC မီဒီကိုခွဲဖြည့်ရှိရရှိတယ်ဒီတချို့ကလည်းပောက်ကွဲတန်းတချို့ကလည်းဒီမီးအောင်တာပေါ့အဲ့ဒါပဲကျွန်တော်တို့
This happened so fast.
It happened extremely, much quicker than anyone expected, including the generals.
Graham Tardif is an Australian aid and development worker who was based in MaNer Plaw. He'd shown us around part of the KNU's old territory.
They thought right until the day that MaNer Plaw fell, they thought they might still be able to hold MaNer Plaw. And at this stage, all of the troops had pulled back to MaNer Plaw and were trying just to hold MaNer Plaw. And the SLORD troops were advancing along the river, shelling into MaNer Plaw, then advancing, shelling, then advancing. And when it became obvious that MaNer Plaw couldn't be held, they torched it, and then there was just a scatter.
So there wouldn't be a lot left of what we filmed in MaNer Plaw?
There's nothing left of what you filmed in MaNer Plaw. It's burnt, it's ashes.
After centuries of oppression and nearly 50 years of armed resistance, the Karen have been driven into a modern-day wilderness. Many KNU soldiers are dead or wounded. Their allies, the pro-democracy politicians and students, have also scattered.
The shelling was very heavy in those areas. It was blanket bombing in those areas.
And what chance would you have if you were seriously injured in that area that's now SLORD controlled?
In those areas you'd have no chance if you were injured and left, because the SLORD troops moved in large numbers across the field in those areas.
These are the only pictures of the MaNer Plaw area after its fall. The soldier and the porter belonged to Burma's army. On the Thai side, chaos. Reports vary, but as many as 30,000 Karen have come across. They can only camp in the jungle.
They shelled the Thai side?
Shell on Thai side. So we cannot stay.
Have you much food?
Some left for just few days.
What sort of a problem do you have here?
Well, the problem here is, especially now with the accommodations, and if the people have to stay here for a long time, I think they will surely have lots of contagious disease like dysentery and many other problems with the disease.
Are they regarded by Thailand as refugees?
Oh, no. They are not regarded as refugees yet.
So they're nobodies, really?
Yes, for the time being there's nobody.
People fleeing slavery are here too. A few of the Burmese civilians press-ganged only last December into Burma's army. As porters, they were forced to carry on their backs the ammunition which was used against the Karen. When MaNer Plaw fell, they escaped across the river. For Thailand, the porters and civilians comprise one part of a larger political problem. For many years, Bangkok has tolerated some KNU presence on its side of the border. But with the loss of MaNer Plaw and its other strongholds further south, virtually the entire Karen army has been forced into Thailand. Within hours of MaNer Plaw falling, the Thai military moved in to try and contain a problem which was suddenly very firmly on their soil. Most of the KNU leadership, many of its soldiers and its casualties are now sealed off by Thai troops. They can't get out and journalists can't get in.
No, it is go to Kamlu, no go, no.
We can't go to Poibaloo?
No.
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, no.
General Bomia's son Rocky and his assistant David Takapau were able to walk out through the jungle to speak to us.
This is not the end of the KNU. This is a loss of headquarters that has been more or less permanent. But the basis is always temporary. So we can move to another place and set up a new one. Of course, this is a setback. We have to admit that.
I think right now the Thai government doesn't want to damage their relationship with the SLORD, and they have to do it very carefully, and they have to do it in a smart way. We can say that.
Is this a difficult situation for Thailand?
Yes, it's difficult because they have to worry about the security. They have to worry about their relation with the Burmese government and so on and so forth, yes.
As economic partners, Thailand and Burma are firming up. Among other joint projects in the planning stage is a large hydroelectric dam at this section of their border, which only days before had been under Karen control. But the fighting has put the Thai-Burmese relationship under strain. Thailand giving the Karen rebels any form of safe haven is unacceptable to Burma. And conversely, Burma's shelling of Thai territory is regarded by Thailand as a hostile act. Tension on the border is undermining Bangkok's policy of constructive engagement. U Tin Ong wasn't killed in the assault on MaNer Plaw. He fled just in time after torching the National League for Democracy's headquarters. He's in northern Thailand secretly for urgent talks with other Burmese dissidents.
Is it all over now, a united opposition to the regime in Burma?
MaNer Plaw cha sonya tai pwe de pwe ye ya ji na wa ta ga tu a si ata ji ya da be phit de.
For the first time, he's critical of the Karen National Union. Its leader, Bomia, he says, should accept responsibility for the fall of MaNer Plaw.
KNU ye ani ni la la ga a the ne aw yi mya mu ma shi be ne tat twen pung ga mu phit de lo jana de lo tong tat pa. Ai ra jaung mo di pyatana mya ko ngin chang swa ma phit shin nain de ha do KNU kaung saung de ma ta won shi de.
The rebellion within the KNU was the key to MaNer Plaw's sudden fall. But in the end, nothing would have stopped the advance of Burma's army. The regime's brutal military solution to an essentially political problem won't bring peace. MaNer Plaw, for so long the symbol of a united opposition, is gone.